What is up, beautiful people? This is Christian here from the Successful Spiritualpreneur podcast, and I am so honored today to have such a light and wisdom keeper on today. His name is Solala Towler, and he's a distinguished author, teacher, and practitioner of Taoist philosophy, meditation, and Qigong with over 25 years of experience in the field. He has authored 12 books on Taoism, including notable titles such as Tales from the Tao, The Tao of Intimacy and Ecstasy, Chuang Tzu, The Inner Chapters, and my favorite, the Cha Do, which is the Way of Tea.
Mm,
So, Solala is also known for his teaching and workshops in Qigong and sound healing across the United States, and he leads trips and excursions to Asia, offering participants immersive experiences in Taoist practices and culture.
great.
Welcome to the show. Such an honor to have you on, Solala.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Beautiful. So tell me, how did you find the Tao and how does it change a person's life? Because I know it has mine.
Yeah. Um, I've been involved in Eastern spirituality, Eastern religion, Eastern philosophy for many, many years, from about 1969. And then I've studied a lot of Buddhism, and about 35 years ago, I was studying Zen Buddhism. I went into a metaphysical bookstore in Portland, Oregon, went to their tiny little used book section and found a book by this guy, Hua Ching Ni. And it totally turned my life around. And so I've been studying with him for 35 years, but I've studied with teachers all over the US and in China because I've led 9 groups to China. And later we can talk about, I'm leading a group to Taiwan in May.
Wow.
Yeah, so we can talk about that later. But yeah, there was something about Zen Buddhism, at least the Japanese style of Zen Buddhism. Felt a little rigid. And so Taoism actually Zen rather, comes from a Chinese form of Buddhism called Chan Buddhism, Chan, which is a mixture of Mahayana Buddhism and Taoism. So there's a lot of influence there. Yeah, and then I got really sick. I had chronic fatigue syndrome to the point where I was totally bedridden. And Chinese herbs got me out of bed, and Qigong is what cured me. So I'm a big believer in Qigong and all that kind of stuff. So I've been doing that for 35 years now.
Wow.
And I did publish a magazine for 25 years called The Empty Vessel, which I'm no longer doing, but it was a Taoist magazine. We had articles and interviews with masters and things. So,
Wow. Is that still available online or was it just a paper
um,
version?
well, I passed it on to some other folks, and weren't able to keep it up. They live in Florida, and their house was destroyed by a hurricane. As a matter of fact,
Oh,
yeah. So
oh
we're
no.
still recovering from that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do a lot of online classes, Zoom classes.
Beautiful.
Just,
And so a lot of people in the audience are um, creators, social media, online. It's a big part of their world,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So my question to you is, how can we live more of the Tao in such an inundated world?
Oh, well, there's a book that a lot of people are familiar with, the Tao Te Ching, written 2,500 years ago, and still very, very useful today. So it's a very simple book. It's a very short book. It's actually the most widely translated book in the world after the Bible. And it has ideas, principles, we call them, like the watercourse way, means like going with the flow, being adaptable. This idea of when you put water in a square container, the water becomes square. You put it in a round container, it becomes round. Yes. So how can we be that flexible and that adaptable? So whatever situation we find ourselves in, sometimes we find ourselves in very uncomfortable situations or not ideal situations. But how can we use this teaching of, okay, I'll find a way to be here in the situation and still be my authentic self and still deal with the situation. And also things like Manzo, which means go slowly, moving through your life, not crashing through your life, but
Hmm.
taking one step at a time. The author Lao Tzu says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.
Mm.
So a lot of people may feel like, well, I would really like to have an online business, but it sounds so complicated and it'll take forever and I have to find all these people. But so they never get around to doing anything. But, even this ancient book tells us just take that first step. Just
Mm.
write a few notes, what you would like to do. Go online and learn, how do I run a Zoom class? I started all this Zoom stuff a year before COVID. And I used to travel all over the country teaching, but during the COVID years, the dark ages, we call it, I learned how to do Zoom. Now I teach, 3 Zoom classes a week, and I'm
Wow.
just starting to travel again, which I love being in the room with people.
Mm.
But this Zoom, I call it Cyber Tao.
I love that.
We get to be, you're far away, you're in Florida, I'm in Oregon, but we are here together in this moment.
Yeah.
And the Japanese have a phrase, ichigo ichi, which means honor this moment. This particular moment will never come again. Even if we get together again, it'll be a different moment and could be a different what's going on with you that day, what's going on with me that day. So we honor this time we have together here. So things like that, it's very useful actually.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I think I just wanna sit back and listen to you for the next hour. I think for me it's just like I'm absorbing so much wisdom, just like how does he see the world
Yeah.
now, you know?
Well,
Um,
I've had very good teachers. I honor my teachers and I share with what I've learned from my teachers. And sometimes as you know, being a spiritual person, sometimes your teachers is a really great book or a class you take. Sometimes it's you get in a car accident or you get a diagnosis that you have to deal with. Those are also our teachers. If we keep our spiritual eyes open and our spiritual ears open for those opportunities, things aren't going well. I'm so depressed. I'm so angry. This is terrible. Or things are not going well. Well, that's just this moment. How can I deal with it to reach another moment that might be even better?
hmm.
Things like that.
Wow. Yeah, I appreciate, the timelessness of the Tao. If something is timeless, you just know it's not a trend, it's not a fad, it's just you can always rely on it. You can always look into the Tao and just like, mm,
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a new age teaching, it's an old age teaching,
interesting. Yes.
which can be used in us today as Westerners. We're not Chinese, we're Westerners. We're living in the 21st century. How do we put those ancient teachings into our life right now so we can be happy and healthy and possibly holy?
Beautiful. Yeah. So as study with your masters and teachers, like what would you say they all had in common apart from the concept of, let's say, the water course way, the flexibility of things? Like, is there anything else that you have extracted from there? It's like, you know what, I feel like everybody's doing that.
Yeah, they don't take themselves too seriously. That's a mark of, to me, a high level teacher. They see the humorous side in almost everything. To me, that's a sign of a good teacher, too.
Mm.
And they're humble, not just follow my words and don't listen to anyone else. I am the highest teacher in the world. That kind of stuff I just don't even go to. I don't want to deal with people like that. I want to deal with people that are humble and open.
Hmm. Beautiful.
That's what works for me.
Yeah.
Tea is a big part of it. You mentioned my Chadao book. I actually have 3 tea books. This is another one, Tea Mind, Tea Heart.
Oh my God.
And it's all stories and poems and articles about tea. And it has 50 color photos inside. But this is one of my favorite. This is an ancient form of the yin yang symbol. It's
Ah.
a spiral. And I took this photo. It's on a door in a Taoist temple up in the mountains in China, the Wudang Mountains. So tea, and then I just have, this is a teacup in my house. It's just tea in Taoism, it's a spiritual path.
Hmm.
Like this is one that I like. What it has a reflection of the sky above the cup of pour tea.
Mm.
So tea is another one of those things. Slowing
Yeah.
down, enjoying the tea. We have this phrase called Pin Ming Lun Dao, which means savor tea, discuss Tao.
Mm.
And usually in Chinese, when you say drink tea, you say he cha. But this is not he, drink. This is pin, savor. And it's three squares, meaning three mouths. And Lun Dao doesn't necessarily you have to talk about Taoism, but just sharing something from your heart with each other. Yeah,
Wow.
so that's a big part of it. And then I have this shameless commercials here. This other book called Tea House at the Edge of the World.
Oh, that's beautiful. You're sharing the wisdom. Don't.
Yeah, it's stories about a magical tea house.
Wow.
It's not on any chart. It's not on any map. You just have to find yourself there, and some kind of healing experience happens. Some of the stories take place in ancient China, some in modern London, all over the place.
Wow.
So that was a
Love
super.
that. Like I personally, I'm only 33 years old, so I don't, I'm still working up to the wisdom that you embody. Um, but I really like. I felt drawn to tea. I mean, I kind of grew up with it, right? Germans are big tea drinkers. Like my parents drank a cup of jasmine green tea every morning.
Oh,
Um, but I never got into it until I was like 22. When Starbucks came out with the matcha latte, it's like
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of it's where your friends go study and you sit with them. I didn't never like coffee.
Oh,
So it's like, okay, great, they have matcha, right? So
yeah,
I was like, what is this? Like, it was great, it was sweet, but then I took out the milk and I took out the sugar. Like, what is this? What is this green stuff, right? And then
yeah.
from matcha, I was diving into the Japanese green tea varieties of Gyokuro, Kamairicha. You have Fukamushi, Sencha, Genmaicha. I mean, all the wonderful, incredible world of green tea in Japan. And I mean, it went so far that I started my own tea brand.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I started this brand.
Very.
It's called One with Tea. 1.5 years ago, and I started selling it on Amazon
Mhm,
because not because I'm a big fan of Amazon. They
mhm.
actually take quite a bit of a cut,
Oh,
but I didn't want to deal with the like brand building, social media because it's so much effort to like build an audience, build blah
yeah,
blah blah. I was like, you know what? Let me
yeah,
just put it on Amazon.
yeah.
People are there already. Yes, Amazon takes like 30-40% of
Right.
of your product,
Yeah,
but I don't have to worry about the whole how people find it. I
yeah.
put it up there. It's beautifully marketed, branded, and of course produced in Japan. It's all organic,
Okay.
so it's
Right.
where it comes from is also
Mm,
important. And I was like, yeah, let me do that because I was like,
yeah,
I love tea so much. I want to share it with more people. How do I do that? I was like, well, let me just create something and put it on
yeah,
Amazon.
yeah.
So,
Are
um,
you familiar with Chinese teas at all? Like
very
pu'er tea?
little. I mean, I've known some, I've tried some,
Mhm.
um, but the world of Chinese teas, I think it's
Fast.
opening, it's more opening up, and it's vast, exactly as you say. So, I mean, if we can spend some time of you discussing a little bit about tea and Tao and just like
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I've never like I felt always drawn to tea and there's such a alignment and synchronicity there with life, spirituality, the
Mhm,
Tao, the timeless,
mhm.
the I mean everything.
Yeah. Well, there's this another principle I call tea mind. Tea mind is the ability to go slowly through your life, to really appreciate all the things in your life, um, to be flexible, uh, psychologically, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and have that feeling that tea mind. You could also drink coffee with tea mind. It doesn't necessarily be have to be tea or have to be Chinese tea. It's just that you're open to learning new things all the time. That's what tea mind is about. I'll share a short poem from here with you,
Please, please.
and it's called "Every Tea Should Be a Time of Celebration."
And that's from which book?
Tea
What's that?
mind, tea heart.
Tea mind, tea heart.
That's a pu'er tea. You see how dark it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's just on my dining room table. I took that. Oh, let me find my glasses. Uh-oh. Let's just ignore that. Here, I'll just unplug the phone, actually. There. I forgot to do that before. Let's see. 4-4. When we drink tea and pin ming, that phrase I just told you, we celebrate the magical transformation of leaf and water contained in the cup or bowl from which we drink. The tea leaves that appear so dead and dry, when you get a lot of tea, especially like pu'er tea, it's a dry cake. People look at it and go, this just looks like dead leaves. But the tea leaves that appear so dead and dry, when paired with hot water, become transformed from dry, dead leaf to a living liqueur, connecting the drinker with the land that the tree or bush grew from, the hands that picked bud and leaves and processed them, a hard labor. The seller of the tea brings the tea to us, our own hands and mouth touching the tea, our spirits becoming calm and centered as we drink the magical brew. So it is that we celebrate this coming together of hand and heart, of land and leaf, of sunlight and moonlight and our own sweet selves. We give thanks and praises for the opportunity and blessing of sharing ourselves with the ancient magic of water, earth, and sunlight. So bright, so life-giving. We celebrate the coming together of all these things, these gifts given freely of the earth and sky. And in this way, every tea becomes a celebration of gratitude and grace.
Wow.
So that's my attitude about tea. Not that we have to do a big, complicated tea ceremony every time we have tea, but it's still sometimes fun to do a ceremony.
Yeah.
You're familiar with Japanese tea. They have a very strong ancient tea ceremony. The Japanese tea ceremony, the Zen ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Chinese are a little, their ceremony is not as complicated.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think sometimes, like you said, the strictness and rigidness from Zen Buddhism can like translate it into the tea world as well, and it's just like
Yeah.
it's not as attractive to me because it's a little bit too it's too masculine. You understand?
It's
Like, uh, uh, uh,
very formal.
yeah,
Chinese are much less formal people as a culture.
interesting.
So their tea ceremony, like what I do, is much less informal.
Hmm.
There's a few things we do, but then we just open it up after like 10 minutes. We're already done with the ritual. Then we can just enjoy ourselves and enjoy the tea.
Yeah. Wow. And so, what are some of your moments, I guess, with tea and with wisdom, or do you remember a conversation you had with
I had
some?
an interesting experience on 2000. I lead groups to China to study Qigong, go up in the mountains, study with Tao masters. And one year I tacked another week on and we went to Tibet, which I was always excited about going to. But the Tibetans, I don't know if you're familiar with Tibetan tea. Traditionally, it's a black tea. They boil it. They put salt in it. And then they also traditionally use like yak milk,
Mhm.
sometimes, or rancid yak butter. So it has a very, very strong flavor that I'm afraid of. And so I told my girlfriend that going to Tibet, I like, what do I do if a monk offers me tea? I have to accept it, right? If a monk offers. And one day I'm sitting in a temple in the back room with three monks. We're just hanging out. This guy comes in with a big thermos. I'm like, uh-oh. He pours us all tea. And it tasted like somebody made like English breakfast, black tea, put some milk in it and salt, and then put it on the shelf for like 3 or 4 days till it got kind of moldy tasting. So it tastes like moldy tea. So I'm sitting there sipping it very slowly and I'm saying to myself, I can do this. I can do this. And suddenly the monk next to me snatches it out of my hand and bangs it on the table. And I think maybe he was like taking pity on me. He could see I was having a hard time with this
Yeah.
because they drink 30 or 40 cups a day of that tea.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
traditionally in Tibet, they don't grow vegetables. They live, very high altitude. So that's part of their vegetables
It's
is
the nourishment.
it-
Yeah.
it's very, and they pour the milk and everything. Why the milk has to be rancid, I don't know. That seems odd to me.
That is an interesting though. I've
Yeah,
always wondered like what happens. I think well if I can just like philosophize or take my take on this, like I went on a boat on Sunday and I made like a big thermos of oolong tea
yeah.
from Taiwan,
Mm.
and Ali Shan oolong,
Oh yeah, yeah,
oolong, and I left it. I didn't drink it at all. I
yeah.
left like it was still half full, which was like a liter, at least. Um, so I left it there till Wednesday, and I
Oh,
drank it Wednesday morning because it was in
oh,
a thermos closed. I was like, yeah, it has this like tangy. It's like
yeah,
it's I don't know. It's like it's a slightly overripe mandarin taste. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, but there has to be something about it. You know what I mean? Because maybe because the tea is like it's like sprouting, it's alive, it's like fermented. It's almost like kombucha but fresh, or
yeah, yeah. And it might be makes it easier to digest because it's
yeah,
partially digested, the
that
milk.
makes sense. There's more enzyme released, especially with the milk.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, the
Interesting.
pu'er tea that I drink a lot of, that we use a lot in Chinese tea, Gong Fu ceremony,
Mhm.
it's a fermented tea. Um, and until fairly recently, till like the 60s, they would make this, it all grows in trees, for one thing. All tea grew on trees originally. And then people started making it bushes because it's easier to pick. But in way southwest China, Yunnan province, there are the tribal people called the Bulang people, the Yi people, and they have these trees. Some of them are 1,000 years old, and they
Wow.
have to climb up the tree to pick the leaves. And then they would process them, and then they would put it on a shelf and not think of drinking it for at least 20, 30 years. And then it slowly ferments like a fine wine.
Hmm.
People think wine, you make grape juice and then you leave it for years, and it's like even better. So that kind of tea is very expensive now. You get a cake like this big for like $3,000 or
Wow.
more. But then people didn't want to wait so long for the tea. They wanted to make it cheaper. So they found another way to make it fast track it, and they process it and then they pile it in big piles on the floor in a warehouse. They wet it down. They put a thermal blanket over it, and then it starts slowly fermenting on its own.
Mm.
Sometimes they'll inoculate it with some of the former batch tea they made. And then within like 6 weeks, it's done. And then that this photo I showed you, this is how it comes out very, very dark.
Mm.
And it has a lot. It's fermented, so it's very good for digestion. It has some unique qualities that are different than green tea. I drink Chinese green tea every morning. That's how I start my day.
Mm.
In the afternoon, I start drinking the pu'er tea.
Beautiful.
It's Puer, sometimes spelled Puerh.
Mm.
And a lot of people in the West call it pu'er. But a friend of mine in Taiwan who has a tea business, he said, no, you pronounce it pu'er. He said, pu'er is a fart. So that's not what we want to call our tea. Yeah. So it's a good way to remember.
That's funny. Poo.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. Wow. And so tell us a little bit, let's shift gears a little bit. Tell us a little bit how did you decide to make this your mission, your life's work, your legacy? Like it's not, I mean, what
Right.
you've built and what you've written, I mean, it's decades
Yeah,
worth of
it
work.
is.
How did you decide initially, like, I'm gonna make this my path?
Well, I grew up in the 60s when I was a young lad, and when I was like 19 years old. It was the 60s in the US, and you may know something about that time. It was a very magical time. And I was like a hippie, then. and just hitchhiking around the country, exploring new ways of living, and that kind of thing. And did some like LSD and stuff like that, which was very helpful to me. It brought me out of my shell I've been in all my life.
Yeah.
But then in 1969, I realized that the smoking and the taking LSD was opening a door for me, but I needed to go through the doorway myself. So I
Mm.
stopped taking anything like that. And I'm because I'm an old hippie, I don't like working for the man. I always have my own business. I'm too spoiled to work for someone else. So, like 30 years ago, I started a Taoist magazine that was sold all over the world. And then after 25 years, I just decided it was time to move on to something else. And then I started teaching Qigong. So it's what Joseph Campbell called following your bliss. That's how I make a living. I live from month to month. I have no savings or anything, but I still am free to teach and live the way I want. So I teach 3 classes a week. I am teaching one tonight, as a matter of fact, on Tao Te Ching, on the more esoteric uh, parts of Tao Te Ching. So it's like I make my living by my spiritual path. I'm very blessed. I feel very blessed in that way. And I'm not super computer savvy because I was born in 1950, way before computers. And so I'm still learning. And I know people are much better, probably you are, at getting yourself out there. I'm on Facebook, but I'm still learning about Instagram and things like that. So I'm still learning about how to present myself to the world
Yeah.
and share what I've learned from my teachers and my experiences of life. And so, I appreciate you inviting me here today to talk about what I love, what still excites me after 35 years of studying it.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's an honor, like um so uh, my little nickname there says Love Pixel, right? So
Mhm.
that's part of my work, or my being, my dharma here on
Mhm.
earth, is to help people um make love tangible. Like, that is my mission. Um and we do that on, like, web design, branding side, like with
Mhm.
beautiful, incredibly crafted websites that
Mhm.
help people to express themselves. So
Mhm.
I'm happy to have more of a conversation about that,
Mhm.
um, and help you, maybe guide you in one way or another, where you can, like, leverage certain things, like, even for example, this interview. Like, the reason why we don't do it on Zoom but we do it here, because this platform allows us to, like, immediately create a short form content for social media without
Oh,
hiring a video editor.
oh,
So, you know,
okay.
um, there's lots of AI platforms and different,
Yeah.
technologies available that allow you to just generate content and, like, get yourself more visible. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm happy to, have a conversation more about that,
Mhm.
in terms of, getting yourself out there. But ultimately, it just comes down to uh, 3 things, right? You need to have people that find you. Traffic is what they
Mhm.
say.
Right.
Then you need to have a platform where people land,
Mhm.
and then on that platform may or may not be some sort of conversion event, whether that's
Mhm.
a purchase or they just leave their email and become part of your newsletter type of thing.
Yeah.
And then throughout time, you build a relationship, and then they might purchase something. And then the third part is, like, the delivery of that. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's traffic, platform, and, like, delivery, right?
And have
So
something of value to share with them.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me especially, like, it's such an honor to give you this platform, because I think you have so much wisdom to share. And a lot of times, like, the young generation that comes in and think, oh, we're all better and we know it better, you know what I mean? But, like, we miss the timelessness, or, like, we miss the slowing down. Like, what was
Yeah.
that concept, that Manzo, or what was it called?
Manzo.
Manzo.
Right.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
take a breath, slow down.
Yeah.
Life can be slow.
Actually, in more traditional Chinese culture, instead of saying the way you say goodbye is zaijian, but traditional they would say manzo. Go slowly away from me.
Mm.
Don't rush out the door. And now China and the cities, anyway, is going faster and faster, just like the West.
Yeah.
But there's some traditional things that some people have lost. Some people still have it. And then
Yeah.
there are people living in the mountains where I go with my groups, and they're living in very, very simple, Spartan kind of places. But their inner world is very, very rich. And
Wow.
they're really strong. They run up and down. There's hundreds of steps. When you go to China, it's kind of funny. Here we have like trails you walk up and down. Anywhere you go in China, trails is hundreds, if not thousands, of stone steps that you
Wow.
walk. And it takes a lot of energy to be able to walk up those steps. And the first time I heard that phrase, I was with these Chinese guys and I was like huffing and puffing. And then I had to stop and catch my breath and then go up. And one of them turned to me and said, Manzo, Manzo. And I didn't know the term, but I could tell what he was saying was slow down, slow down. You don't have to rush up the steps. You don't have to rush through your life.
Mm.
You don't have to rush to make things happen as fast as humanly or non-humanly possible. My teacher says he can describe the perfect Taoist lifestyle in 3 words. Take it easy. And I don't know if you've heard of another ancient Taoist teacher, Chuang Tzu. He's the most important after the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu. And he says, he describes the perfect lifestyle as, it's called Xiao Yo Yo, which means free and easy wandering or free and easy roaming. Live your life. No one can free you but yourself,
Mm.
really, on the inside. If you free yourself and give yourself room to grow and to experience and to dance. One of my favorite songs right now is from this group, the Ezra Collective. They're kind of a funk jazz group. And they have this song, God Gave Me Feet for Dancing.
Mm.
And it goes, the chorus is, God made me feet for dancing. That's exactly what I'll do. So that's kind of a Taoist way of life too. Your
Mm.
feet are dancing, your heart is dancing, your soul is dancing,
Yeah.
not just your body.
Yeah. It's
Instead of,
very interesting to see, like, because from my perspective, um, the lifestyle has gotten so sedentary,
mm-hmm.
you
Well,
know.
sit in front of a computer, yeah, like I
Yeah.
do.
Everything's in front of computer, the content creation, the
Mm-hmm.
design,
Oh
the
yeah,
you name it, the writing, the video shooting. It's crazy. It's like
yeah,
we should do this more often,
yeah.
Yeah.
Dancing. God gave us feet for dancing. That's exactly what we'll do. Well,
Wow.
that's why in Taoism we have moving meditation, like Tai Chi.
Mm.
You're moving in very prescribed ways, very slowly. You're moving, but inside you're very still. And Qigong is the same kind of thing, where it's a moving meditation because
Mhm.
just sitting, like they do in Zen meditation a lot, mostly that's all they do for sitting for hours and hours and hours. And
Yeah.
I would say that's not natural. We're like animals. Animals can sit very quietly, but then they can move. You have a cat who looks like she's sound asleep, and you open a can of tuna fish in the kitchen, they're like awake and in there immediately. So we can be awake enough to respond, but also inside we're very still.
Hmm.
That's the key.
Beautiful. And how how would we in this day and age, like let's say someone's interested in learning more about you know learning from you or your work that you've done apart from the books that you have available, is there anything else that people can get in touch with your work and the online courses? You said you have like a Zoom study group.
Yeah,
um,
I have a website.
mhm.
I'm starting a new class next Wednesday that I'm
Okay.
very excited about. It's called Open Heart Qigong, the opposite of open heart surgery. And it's bringing kind of like the cutting edge of Western science about the heart. People think the heart is just a pump. The heart is constantly sending electrical messages up to the brain and back down into the gut and back up, and a lot more stuff about the heart. And in Western language, we have a lot of follow your heart. Someone's heartbroken. Someone is good-hearted, learning something by heart. We have all these ideas of the heart. And in Chinese medicine, what we think of as our cognitive mind, they say resides in our heart. So I'm bringing in some of that modern Western science and also Chinese medicine and Qigong and meditation. And we're going to be doing Qigong exercises and doing invocations and mantras. So it's like a 9-week course that I'm starting on Wednesday.
That's
Yeah, I'm
beautiful.
very excited about.
And what's the website that people can find that?
Well, abode like home, abode Tao, spelled with a T.com.
About Tao.
Yeah. And I have my books on there and my courses.
Beautiful. We'll link that in the description.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your side, as kind of like that wisdom keeper, and
Mhm.
just like overall, I would say, to me, it sounds like you've really found your like calibration point, your balance in life, on how you want to show
Yeah.
up and live every day. Like,
Yeah.
what are some of the um, spiritual practices that you do on a daily basis?
Well, I drink green tea in the morning. While I'm drinking tea, I'm reading Taoist books, studying. And then I actually have a little temple in my backyard, which was there when I bought my house. It's pretty amazing.
How
So I
come?
get, yeah, it's a little 8-sided building. It was built as a Sufi temple.
Uh,
I bought my house from some Sufi friends. So I do sitting meditation, visualization. I do invocations, which are not prayers asking for something, but something to create a special kind of energetic field. It has lines like, the goddess of my heart nourishes my life abundantly, things like that.
hmm,
And, uh, and I do Qigong and Tai Chi Chuan. I have Qigong. I've been doing one certain Qigong form for 25 years now. And I still love it. And I'm still learning things from it. You learn a Qigong form or a Tai Chi form, and after you're doing it for a while, the form itself becomes your teacher. You learn the form from a teacher, but then the practice itself becomes your teacher.
hmm.
So things like that. I'm a musician too. I play music. Yeah, and I lead sometimes kirtan. You probably know kirtan music.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Your
do
time.
kirtan.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. It's great because it's not like I'm up there performing for an audience. We're all in the band together.
Yeah,
We're chanting and singing, and you don't have to worry, like, can you hold a good singer or not? Anybody can chant. Don't worry about what you're sounding like. Just join the group. And it's a spiritual practice, of course, as you probably know. In India, it's that chanting the names of the divine to kind of bring that divine feeling into your own body. And in China and Japan, we have this goddess, Guan Yin. In the
hmm,
West, they often call her Kuan Yin, partly because the Chinese is difficult to know how to pronounce. When you see a T, it's pronounced as a D. So unless you already knew that, you have no idea. Guan Yin is the bodhisattva of mercy and compassion, she who hears the cries of the world,
hmm.
and kind of that aspect of the universe, that very supporting, loving, compassionate nature of the universe. So I bring in all that stuff.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
Yeah, and then I do my teachings on Zoom. It's really, I love being in a room with people, but when it's not possible, I can't drive to Florida to meet with you, or you're not going to fly to Oregon to meet with me for this. We take advantage of what we have here in CyberDAO,
Yeah,
and it's real. We can share real things here, right?
yeah. So what's one invocation you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, I don't have any of them memorized, but I have a mantra that I do every day.
Yeah.
And in English, it means my mind. Now that I have to say it, not in context here, my mind is a bright pearl, rolling smoothly with no obstruction. Qing Shu Yuan Ming Wu Nei. in Chinese, and I actually have a mala, and I chant it. And it
Mm,
means my mind is a bright pearl rolling smoothly with no obstruction. It's open. It's ready to go in any direction it needs to go or where I want it to go. I'm not stuck in one place. They talk about your life, living your life in a groove instead of a rut. They're two very different things,
mm.
right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So, so I do the stillness meditation. I do the moving. It's important to have a balance of both in the Taoist tradition.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've come to see a lot of things in my life also through the lens of like yin and yang, masculine, feminine, right? Like, how does this activity feel? How does this business relationship feel in terms of balance and exchange? And how does this whatever activity feel, right? Because from there, you can adjust of like, well, I feel now I need more nourishing. All right. Right
Right.
now I'm ready to give
Yeah.
again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yin yang. It has nothing to do with gender, but it's like yang energy. Usually thought I was creative, expansive kind when you got a new project going. And then yin is more contemplative and being quiet. And we need both.
Hmm.
Sometimes we're in our life, we're creating something and we're really putting a lot of energy out there and it's very young, which is great. And then other times we need to pull back a little bit.
Yeah. Retreat.
Yeah. And we need both, really.
Yeah, exactly. So we're nearing the last 10 minutes of the podcast. And I wanted to ask you some like personal questions, like a couple just short questions but deep questions. So the first question would be like what are three words that you want people to know you for after you leave this physical incarnation?
Wow. Honest, fun, and open.
Honest, fun, and open. Beautiful.
I've never
And
thought of it that way. So that's what came up.
mhm. Who or what inspires you the most currently in your spiritual and entrepreneurial journey? Is there anything or anyone that you're like, yes, this just keeps.
Um, yeah, as we've talked here, I've shared that I'm new at a lot of this computer stuff, and so I'm learning and trying to remain open, and it's really interesting to me and really exciting to me actually to as you're saying, bring all the beautiful spiritual experiences and teachings I've had from my teachers and share that with others in a way that ancient masters didn't do. You would have to go to them. You'd have to climb the mountain to get to the teacher. The teacher didn't come down and walk, just to the village and start teaching. So, but now we have these tools that we use, online tools and things, so that I can just put out, this is what I'm offering. If you're interested, here's the link.
Yeah.
But it's almost like the ancient teachers. I wrote a book. We're calling it the Tao Te Ching. If you're interested, get a copy. Taoists don't proselytize. We're not trying to convert people to Taoism. One of my teachers says, we just suggest you might be interested in this. Try it. It's up to
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
We're not trying to force anyone into our way of belief or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's like feminine, passive, soft, like, hey, look, this is cool. Look at it if you like. If not, no worries.
Yeah. Yeah. Or a little practice. I just looked at the time. It's already changed, but it was 11:11.
Hmm.
So 5 years ago, I had cancer. I had surgery for it, recovered very well. But ever since then, whenever I see a clock that says 333 or 11:11, I stop and I say, thank you for the blessing. Thank you for the magic.
Mm.
It takes 10 seconds, but it's just like we're going along our day and the day is moving and moving. And suddenly we see, oh, could be a very special moment. Stop and acknowledge it. I'm not thanking any deity or any person. I'm just giving thanks.
Yeah. And it's funny because you're saying that in the 44th minute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was just 11:11 here.
That's funny.
Yeah, I pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a simple little practice, but it can be nice.
Yeah. So, last question before we move into more of the closing out part of the
Okay.
podcast is what is your vision of the new earth, of what you see coming for humanity?
I know we're living in very strange times with what's going on in the government in my country and places in Ukraine and various places in the world. But I try to remember that Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, he lived in a place time which scholars call the Warring States period. And he felt society was starting, there was a lot of conflict going on. And that's where he decided to leave. But some friend of his, some guy, convinced him to write some of his thoughts down. The very first line of the Tao Te Ching is Dao Ke Dao Fei Chang Dao, which means the Tao that can be written down or put in a little box is not the real Tao. So we need to remain open. We need to remain with our hearts open, but our eyes open too, and support the things and the people and the traditions and the classes and all the things that we know are positive for the world, our world, and everyone else in this world.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And I think it's a really cool time right now to like for humanity to take that baton, to take
Yeah.
responsibility, to take the power back from like
Mhm.
all this like old media, like all this stuff is dying, TV, radio, all that stuff,
Yeah.
like Hollywood, people don't really care about it that much anymore, which
Mhm.
is really fantastic. It just
Yeah.
shows you that the attention is going back to where people want to put their attention, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's a great sign that humanity is actually, progressing in the right direction.
Mhm. We're being challenged right now, and we want to be able to rise to that challenge
Yeah.
of not. You look at the headlines, oh my God, the whole world's going to hell. Or you could look at the headlines, well, some people are having a really tough time. And how can I send more love into the world?
Yeah.
How can I acknowledge the people in my life instead of just, oh yeah, there's my partner, there's my friend. Like really acknowledge much they're, how much we appreciate of what they're giving us. And artists, great teachers all around the world that are offering something really positive. It's not all negative in the world. There's always a mixture, like you said, yin yang. Yin yang is always moving. It's not
Mhm.
a static thing.
Mm.
That's why it's a circle instead of a square. Or that photo I showed you of a spiral.
Yeah.
Things
Yeah.
are shifting and changing all the time and transforming. We are transforming. The very cells in our body are dying off by the thousands every day, and we're growing new ones. And how can we remain open so that we can join that transformational journey that's always open to us if we open our mind and heart to it?
Yeah. What a beautiful message to leave our audience with. And I really like to always dedicate the last part of our conversation to, our guest, which is you. And I would like to ask you, just as a person, as a spiritual entrepreneur, as a brand of yourself and other brands, like what are your future goals and what are you looking to call in? Kind of like doing a little just little visioning to give over to you as like
Question.
putting that out there.
Yeah. I just want to continue offering classes and guidance to people, to once again share what I've learned, what's worked in my life, and get to be a little more comfortable with media. and and I have some people helping me with that, and just be able to share and listen to what other people have to say, what other people have to share about their journey. We're all in it together, right? The whole world, we're all in it together. Let's acknowledge that and honor that.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And then lastly, what are the last words you want to leave the audience with and where can people find you?
Well, my website is abode home, ABODETAO.com. And I have my classes and my books and all that. I have a lot of books and classes. And I'm really happy to connect with people like yourself and people who are seekers, people who are light bringers is one of the terms that people use. People who are on a spiritual path. It doesn't have to be Taoism. It doesn't have to be an Eastern, whatever spiritual path they're on. All the paths lead to the same goal, right? Unity, oneness, source with a capital S. And so I'm doing my part, and I acknowledge and honor people who are all doing their part.
Beautiful.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you so much. And yeah, thanks for thanks for being here, sharing your wisdom, sharing your heart, and
Yeah,
we really appreciate you, being here. It's such an honor,
it's really nice meeting you. It's really nice to be part of this. I'm going off now to check out the new Indian restaurant in town.
I love
That's
it.
where I go from here.
That sounds like a great thing to
Yeah,
do. All
yeah,
right. Well,
yeah.
thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
And we'll stay in touch.